Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Cold Country Podcast, where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. As always, I'm joined on my left by Tyler Cobb, Matt Howe, and this week we got Max, Jit, Remy back. Gentlemen, how are we?
To the show.
I'm happy to be here. How are you guys doing?
I'm good.
Having a great time.
I'm a little dressed up for an occasion.
It's warm outside.
It's very warm.
It's been nice.
It's nice out in the middle of the day, but in the morning.
Yeah,
Big man does look nice in this little button up. Get up.
I got up this morning at about 8 o'clock, and it was like 45 outside, and now it's 70.
I like the 45 better.
I woke up, didn't go outside, decided to put clothes on that didn't match the weather, and here I am in a sweater.
Now it's hot outside. Now you're sweating a little bit.
Back home, it's like 76. I'm excited to go back home during spring break.
It's not much warmer down in Florida than it is here, huh?
The Floridian.
Yeah, I'm down to go back. I got a few events I got to go to.
Mean night. Mm-hmm. That's the way it is. All right, guys, let's jump straight into it. We're going to talk a little bit of women's basketball. So last week we mentioned a little bit about JJ's historic performance against Utah, her last game in a Mountaineer uniform at the Coliseum. Maybe for the NCAA tournament.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Maybe. So we'll see about that. But another great performance from her at Cincinnati on Saturday.
Following it up strong.
With another 30 bomb. 31 points, right? Mm-hmm. You got the stat line. Read down the stats.
31, 11 for 18 from the field, 6 for 9 from the free throw line. Another historical night for JJ, continuing her excellence. I believe you said she was the
Yeah, so this was the first time since 2017 since the program has had a player to score 30 points in back-to-back games. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. She's on fire, dude.
She is indeed. And so is the women's basketball team, hoping to carry it into Big 12 tournament play. Before we get into that and talk a little bit more about Cincinnati, I do want to give a shout-out to all three women on the girls' team that got Big 12 honors. We'll start with Kaya Watson. She was named a member of the Big 12 All-Defensive Team. Jordan Harrison makes the third team All-Conference, All-Big 12 Conference. And then J.J. Quinterly won Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year and first team All-Conference, both of which I do believe were anonymous.
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Did I say anonymous? My fault.
did.
Unanimous. Unanimous. Wow, that's embarrassing. Either way, congratulations, JJ, Jordan, and Kaya on those awesome awards and honors. Y'all definitely earned it.
Absolutely.
Every single one of you.
It was crazy watching all of the games this year, and I don't think anyone who regularly went to those games expected anything less.
No.
We knew.
JJ was always number one option. Jordan Harrison was always, if JJ was having an off night, Jordan Harrison had it rolling. Or even if JJ did have it rolling, Jordan Harrison felt like what kept the offense moving. And then Kai Watson did all the dirty work, the rebounds, the defense, the assists. I mean, it felt like a 1-2-3 punch, and that's what got it done night in and night out. And here we are in Big 12 tournament plays with not one but two buys.
To me, overall, it's crazy to think about the fact that if you are going up against JJ on the perimeter and you somehow get past her without her stealing the ball, which she's going to do like more than half the time, if you somehow get past her with a screen or whatever, you have to also dribble into Kai Watson.
Yeah. It's
like, that's unimaginable as a normal college basketball player.
This team is a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
And Cincinnati felt the effects of that. Overall, Cincinnati and West Virginia shot the ball very, very similarly. The primary difference was the rebound. We out-rebounded them 47-29. That's nearly a 20 rebound difference. Turnovers was 16-16, so something that the West Virginia women's basketball team is typically known for, winning the turnover battle. It was fairly even. So those rebounds is what did it.
Absolutely. And I didn't think that at any point in conference play that rebounding would be like the overall determining factor, because we had always said with both of our teams, men's and women's teams, that there was a problem with rebounding overall.
Yeah.
Especially in our early conference losses. So it is a fantastic time to have a game where you out-rebound your opponent basically by 20 going into the conference tournament. It's great timing.
Good boost. I do want to say, like I said, Jordan Harrison, she like keeps the offense moving. She's the gear that makes it all turn. She had 21, 3 assists and 3 rebounds, along with 4 steals in the game. So a heck of a stat line from her. And then Jordan Thomas. Did I say Jordan Harrison? Right?
I believe so.
I believe so. So we got Jordan Harrison is what I just read out. Jordan Thomas off the bench had 16 on 7 for 10 from the field. So really good shooting from Jordan Thomas. All 3 of them had amazing nights, beating the old Big East rival into the ground.
Yeah. You talking about Jordan Thomas, we need those kind of games from her. She can be a bully.
She can be.
That is what we need from her every night, because there is almost always a size disadvantage when she's going up against somebody. Like, she is almost always the bigger person in the matchup. We need her to make her size known. So, and she did that in this game, and she had great efficiency too. There have been other games where she didn't play so hot. She didn't shoot well. But, again, it's just great timing leading into the tournament for all of our players to be in sync like they were.
Great game to finish off the regular season.
So, and we want to take a look at our Big 12 tournament seeding. We managed to get the number 4 seed.
Double buys.
Via Iowa State. Iowa State upsetting Kansas State gave us the number 4 seed.
Yes. Yeah. Huge advantage in the tournament, especially given its back-to-back. I mean, game day after day after day. So, round 1, UCF plays BYU, and then the winner of that game plays Kansas State, and the winner of that game we get in round 3?
Round 3,
Yep.
technically.
I'm going to go out on a hunch and say that Kansas State ends up there.
I would too.
A team that we have beaten by double digits, 20 points, something around there. I think we make it out of round 1 pretty safely. We're going to talk about that when the time. Well, when is that game? That game will be, this weekend-ish?
All of them will be this
It'll be
upcoming week.
Our first game will be Friday. So
Yeah, so I'm saying we'll talk about it like it's not this week. So I guess we're talking
right.
about it now. I say we get the win against Kansas State and we end up playing TCU
end up playing
in round
TCU
2.
most likely. For me, I'll go through our 3 potential scenarios here. So the most difficult one for me is UCF, because I could be stupid. Have we played UCF this season?
I don't know, but I can check while you keep on talking.
But I was to say, if we play BYU, which is another unlikely scenario, if we play BYU, the key to stopping them is eliminating their size advantage and stopping the shooting. They're a really hot team.
We won 80-58 against UCF at home.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about UCF.
I'm not worried about UCF. BYU, I'm not worried about either, but the key is going to be make sure their size advantage is put to a minimum, make sure that we can match them in rebounding, if not beat them, and shut down the jumper. And then for K-State, which is the most likely scenario, my keys would be use our size advantage, because they won't have Ioka Lee.
Yep.
And we need, like we were mentioning Jordan Thomas earlier, this would be the perfect opportunity for her to have a big game again with no big man inside. And then if we can keep JJ and Jordan running in the fast break, getting steals, winning the turnover battle, that's how we killed him a couple weeks ago here, was by turnovers and fast breaks. So if we can do all of that, I see no reason why we can't play TCU in the next round.
The girls are built for big moments, and I think they showed that last year against Iowa in the tournament. I think we make it out of round 3. I think we beat Kansas State, is who I inevitably think it'll be. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we play TCU in round 2. I'm a little concerned about TCU. However, I think we get hot at the right time, beat TCU, and then we lose to Baylor in the championship game.
In the Big 12 title game. My prediction is we beat K-State. I think that the rest is going to do us a lot of good. And we're going to come in and play Kansas State the way that I was saying we need to play them. We're going to beat them. We're going to face TCU. We had a rough game against TCU last weekend. It wasn't a pretty game to watch, but I feel like regardless of the outcome, it's going to be close.
One thing we could be undervaluing here is the fact that this is essentially a home game for Kansas State.
Yeah, they're going to have a little bit of a home court advantage. Every time I've been to Kansas City 2 times to watch these tournaments, and Kansas is the overwhelming fan base since they're only about an hour and a half away from the city. But Kansas State, too, there are a lot of people there for Kansas State.
This is essentially a home game for Kansas State, so I don't want to overlook that first-round matchup, but I think we get by them. I think we beat TCU, make that championship game, and lose to, I assume, Baylor. Who knows? Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Utah could find a way to get in there.
Oklahoma State can surprise some people on that other side of the bracket.
If everything goes chalk, it'll be Baylor, Oklahoma State in the semis, and then Baylor in the championship. But Oklahoma State has shown that they can do it too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way there. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State or Utah pulled off a couple upsets either.
Me neither. Iowa State, they always have a chance without Crooks.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And then if we manage to make the Big 12 championship game, that'll sort of give us maybe a home court advantage in the NCAA tournament if we were managed to secure a 4 seed.
That'll be huge. That's a big one. What's your bracket predictions here, Matt?
Well, like you were saying, I think we'll do pretty well. Probably ending up with K-State, and I like a win there. We do struggle on the road. We're 5-5 in away games this year, and it's definitely going to be an away game setting, even though it's technically a neutral site. But I think we could push past K-State. TCU, again, is a fantastic team. But if we overcome that, I will be more than happy with where we end up. And definitely looking forward, hopefully, to a number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which would mean that we host here in Morgantown, right?
Yeah.
So that would be pretty good. On the other side of the bracket, like you were saying, I think Oklahoma State and Baylor are obviously the two likely to move forward. Out of those two, I think Baylor probably has the edge, but Oklahoma State has beat everybody and also is the only team in the conference to lose to Houston, which is Houston's only conference win. So that game is as big of a coin toss as it could possibly be, assuming it gets to that point. But for us, I think it'll be a good tournament. I think we'll go out and play pretty well because that's just how we do things.
I do want to note, since we got in, since we're in the tournament with 2 byes, since we got into the beef of the schedule, okay, so essentially past all of the mid-majors towards the front. I know they weren't all mid-majors. You've got Pittsburgh, A&M, and Texas there at the top. But since then, we have not had more than a 3-game winning streak, and we are currently on a 2-game winning streak. We would need Kansas State would tie it, beating TCU would extend it.
I personally think that the time off and the neutral site, will actually play into our advantage. And I think we can extend past a 3-game winning streak.
I think we can too. I just wanted to note it because I just noticed it as I was looking through the schedule.
That's fair. But then away games too, Matt mentioned we're 5-5 on the road. That only other loss was to Texas in those pre-conference play tournaments. So, and Texas is number 1 now, so that's a great loss when you put it on paper.
Going to be an interesting tournament, that's for sure. Shall we get on to the men's basketball team?
Yeah, we can talk about the men's basketball team. So let's go ahead and recap the BYU game a little bit. I know you have most of the interesting content for us on this game.
I tell you what, I've never, I was throwing a fit getting ready to go to bed because I hate West Coast games played at 10 o'clock for East Coast fans.
I think it's wrong.
It's
if they
dumb.
do that.
Anyway, there's a whole lot to talk about. As this game happened, I overreacted a bit because I said that this game hurt worse than the Arizona State game did, because we're in positions to win and then we just kind of give it up, and then there's things that we do wrong over and over again and they never get fixed. The entire offense is Javon Small, and it has been that for how many ever weeks now, and it's like nobody else ever steps up against a competent team. On defense, Traore from BYU totally outplayed Eduardo Andre and Amani Hansberry. Totally outplayed them. 20 points, 9 for 13 from the field. I mean, had a night. And it frustrated me while watching it, because it was like we got into foul trouble, and I'm not going to speak too much on the officiating, because when you lose by 21 points, the officiating isn't going to change much. But we got into foul trouble early, had to play a little bit softer, but we're in the second half, under 12 to 10 minutes to go, and Ed Andre and Hansberry are barely playing physical defense. If somebody is that hot and they're just kind of sealing you off in the paint, getting the ball, and they're just going to hit every shot, I'm sorry, but you've got to start being a little bit physical and risking the fouls. Traore carried the offensive load for BYU. I cannot remember for the life of me who it was. I think it was Igor Demon that hit the threes there in the second half that kind of sparked a BYU run, and they ran away with it from there. And like I said, on our side, it was all Javon Small. 33% from the field and 29% from three is not going to get it done. I still think you're in the tournament with one more win, especially with how weak the bubble is right now. What do you say? Joe Lundardi has us at a 10 seed as of right now?
10 seed, right now. So it was a March Madness and ABC collaborative prediction that just came out a few hours ago. Has us as a 10 seed playing Illinois as a 7 seed in Gainesville, Florida. So we're going to be playing with the Gators. If we were to manage to scrape by Illinois, we're most likely going to be playing Florida, and that ain't going to be a pretty game to watch.
If we get there, I'll be happy. That's all I have to say about that.
That's fair.
The BYU game was ugly. We're recording at an awkward time. We're recording a couple hours before Utah tips off. You're in with one more game, and I wholeheartedly believe that. We don't know much about the men's bracket right now, do we?
No, not really.
We just got a first short out. So my message to you all is that as the men's bracket comes out, we'll make a couple shorts with our reactions and predictions, because we don't, obviously the seeding isn't in place just yet.
Should we do a live reaction on Selection Sunday? Because they'll be doing both women and men. Should be.
We can.
So
we'll do something like that. We'll get it out for you. But as of right now, no seeding. An ugly loss to BYU. I don't know, man.
The thing that made me the most upset with this game was our mental fortitude, if that makes sense. Because what was the big guy's name again for BYU? Had 24. Traore. I was watching Traore eat our big men alive, like you were saying earlier. I don't know how you don't have the mental capacity to start fouling him and fouling him hard, because you could tell when we were playing against him one-on-one, he scored 2 or 3 baskets in a row, and his teammates just started dumping the ball in the post because they knew he was going to score. It was a horrible thing to watch from our perspective. And you could tell Hansberry and Andre were sort of timid. They were afraid to foul him because they had already earlier in the game, they already had 3 fouls at one point. So they were just sort of playing timid with their hands down, not really getting up in his face, trying to contort the way that he tries to move to the side to fade away or whatever. They weren't trying to affect his body movement. They were basically letting him do whatever he wanted. And whenever you get scored on, at least in my experience, you get scored on 2 or 3 times in a row and they try to do it to you again, you're going to jump on top of him, like kick him, like elbow him, like you're going to do something to stop him. And I don't know why we didn't, because I don't want to start a fight or anything, but you can't back down in that situation. You just can't throw your hands up and be like, oh, well, I guess you're just better than me. I don't want those type of players on my team.
So I compared it during the game to Patrick Mahomes and the soft roughing the passer calls. They were calling the game really soft, and there were a lot of bad calls. But again, you lose by 21 points. You can't blame it on the refs. But I did tweet out middle of the game and probably sometime in the second half that it was like, if Patrick Mahomes is going to get these roughing the passer calls for a really soft hit that was not roughing the passer at all, and you know you're going to get the penalty, lay him out.
Right.
Make him feel it one time.
That's
and
what
then
I'm
he'll
saying.
stop it. So then this time, this is like you said, and it doesn't even have to be Andre or Hansberry. If you want to keep them out of foul trouble, bring in somebody for one play, have them play the most physical defense you've ever seen in the world. Just as soon as Traore goes up for the shot, blah.
Yeah.
And I am not for dirty fouling. I don't condone dirty fouling, even though I just said that's what we should have done, and you did as well. But it felt like something needed to happen to send a message, because Traore was just getting what he wanted in the
I guess
inside.
my question is, what happened to a good hard foul? Like, if you go back and watch basketball, especially NBA basketball from the 80s, right? When you watch Larry Bird highlights, there are just a lot of good hard fouls that happen. Like, a lot of the clips I see are like Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer was a dirty player, by the way. But a lot of those, like, they're just tackling each other, and that's not what I want. But the way that they're fouling them is a hard foul. Like, you're making sure to, like, cup the ball and his arms all at once and just, like, shove him down to make sure that he can't shoot. And that's what I want to see. I want to see that type of aggressiveness whenever you know you're getting beat. Because if you keep doing that to him, he ain't going to want to do it again. And it's going to start hurting. And he ain't going to want to do that all game. So my message to Andre and Hansberry, you guys are great players. You've shown us glimpses of how good you can be this season. Don't become soft. Don't become the guys that back down when you get beat a couple times in a row. BYU was not a great showing of that. And I know you guys can do better than that. So
Utah's a big team. Obviously, you guys have already seen. I'm a little nervous for this Utah game. A bit of a Josh Eilert revenge game, potentially. Obviously, we don't really need to preview it because it's happened already for them.
right.
But if talking to you guys specifically, not the audience, if we want a chance against Utah, Hansberry and Andre have got to be big, physical bigs tonight.
Especially Andre, dude, because Andre doesn't have a jumper. Hansberry has a jumper.
Yeah, Hansberry has an offensive bag. Eduardo Andre does not. He is strictly there for big man presence in the paint, and it was not there versus BYU.
But he needs to learn the hook shot, if anything. I do not want Andre becoming the next Jimmy Bell. Because Jimmy Bell
What
had
a pull right there. Jimmy Bell.
That's deep lore.
That's an elite pull.
Jimmy Bell had almost no offensive bag. He could dunk over people, but he couldn't shoot. Like, you could see it when he got to the free throw line. He was shaking a little bit. But I think Andre just needs to learn a little bit of paint work.
Some footwork, some fundamentals.
He's got the tools for sure.
He's a big guy.
All right. So
UCF.
looking to UCF, it's going to be March 8th, our final home game before the men's Big 12 tournament. Senior night for everybody. I see us winning. I'm not sure by how much, but I know that these guys are going to kick it into gear for the Mountaineer faithful. It's going to be a relatively packed Coliseum, if not sold out. So I feel like they're going to do what they got to do. I think they're going to shoot well. I think they're going to try a little bit of experimental play calling for the tournament. They're going to start working some new things in, and they're going to display it against UCF. I see us getting the dub.
I think it's an easy win. I'm not terribly worried unless we lose to Utah tonight. Then I'll be slightly worried because then this, I believe, becomes a must-win scenario. But it should be an easy win for the Mountaineers. Just be big, physical, and find some offense outside of Javon Small.
Yep.
Yep.
Short answer. Yep. That should be an easy wrap up for this season. I think regular season.
I was going to play off what me and Tyler were saying earlier, being big and physical. If you're big and you're physical and you're getting your footwork right and you're getting position in the paint and laying the ball up, what is that going to do? That's going to free up Javon Small a little more. Just a little more. Like they're going to stop trapping him every single possession, because if they can work in a way for Javon to just dump that ball off into the paint, they can't double all the time.
It was like Javon was being tripled against BYU.
I know.
I mean, it was, and nobody else was hitting.
Like when he gets trapped, you need one person to help out, another person close by, and you need at least one big man roll into the paint. And a lot of the time that wasn't happening, and he was starting to get trapped whenever all 5 of our guys were standing on the 3-point line. That is what ticks me off more than anything when I watch our team, is everybody standing at the 3-point line, not moving around. It is like whenever we start our half-court possession and we're setting off-ball screens and nobody can get open, we just give up and try to let Javon create something himself, which just doesn't work.
It's frustrating because I said this on Twitter. If you were to tell me in November that we were on the verge or a tournament team, I'd be very happy. If I knew that we made the tournament, I would have been ecstatic. But the bar that you set in early season, when you beat Gonzaga, you beat Arizona, you beat Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse, you beat Iowa State. Now, some of those wins have obviously gone downhill a little bit. When you won those games, you set a bar, and you have slowly just climbed down the ladder instead of staying equal or climbing up higher. So I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to call the season a failure, but it's towards the end of the season has been a little bit underwhelming. Now, if we beat UCF, go to a tournament, maybe win a game in the Big 12 tournament, and then maybe another game in the actual tournament, that'd be a great way to end the season. Either way, I think it's a successful season.
Yeah, I think so too overall. I don't think I would have said that we would have made the tournament at the beginning.
Yeah, I was.
So
I probably wouldn't have said that if I was asked.
It's kind of interesting to look back through the regular season. You know, you have a couple of wins at the beginning. You lose to Pitt at Pitt. Rival games,
which
they
looks
happen.
So weird now. That loss almost reminds me of the football loss. How Pitt started off the season fairly well in basketball and football. I mean, they started 7-0 in football,
yeah,
and then lost out,
and then lost 6 straight. Pitt has completely fell off of relevancy in basketball this season.
Yeah, and then you go and beat Gonzaga and lose to Louisville. Great win, decent loss. You beat Arizona. You go through, win all your games. You get to Kansas, beat them for the first time in Allen Fieldhouse, beat Oklahoma State. Everyone kind of saw that one coming. You lose to Arizona. They're a good team, good loss. Beat Colorado, lose to Houston. Good team, good loss. Then you beat Iowa State at home. Huge, right? It's like we're having the season. And then boom, 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 else. Turn around and win Cincinnati, lose to TCU. Then it's up, down, down, up, down, up, down. And just kind of weird to see, you know, once the season had really gotten started, you were like, we're on top of the world, and immediately it goes.
Well, I'm also going to look at this from a standpoint that I don't like blaming the refs for losses, and that's why I didn't against BYU, because no good or bad ref is going to make you close a 21-point deficit. But I wholeheartedly believe if the refs were more fair or equal on both sides in both the TCU game and the Kansas State game. The Kansas State game is at least closer. The TCU game is a win, and then the first BYU game is a win.
I think so with Baylor
TCU
as well.
that one's iffy.
It was only a 3-point difference.
What was the officiating like that game? It was pretty poor, I think, now that you have said it.
Yeah, that was one that didn't quite feel right.
All I'm saying is Kip Kissinger is probably the only ref in the world that would make you lose by 40 if he wanted to. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, let me check this Baylor game and then we'll move on. Free throws, yeah, you're right, 17-32. So there are at least 3 games on the schedule that we lost that I see as wins had the refs not completely screwed us. That puts us at what? 20 wins.
It'll put us at 20 and 11
that would put us at 20 wins, not including what happens tonight against Utah and UCF.
Right.
That's 3 games. And then the only other one is then at that point your worst loss is really that Arizona State loss at home, which the officiating was fairly
I don't think
decent.
officiating was bad against Arizona State.
That one wasn't terrible. So there's 3 games on the schedule I look at, and it's like, okay, it wasn't necessarily a bad loss, and I think the ref screwed you. The worst loss is that Arizona State game, and then getting blown out on the road against Tech and BYU. But like I said, we're rambling a little bit. Good luck to the boys tonight. You guys already know. And then good luck to in the Big 12 tournament as well. Sorry, I stuttered.
Good luck to all of our basketball players. That's what you got to say.
And the coaching staff.
And the coaching staff.
Oh, my goodness. Moving on. But actually, before we go to football, 12-0 baseball, baby. And unranked.
Yeah, dude.
That is West Virginia bias if I've ever seen. Unbiased? Is that how you would word that?
I mean, who's the toughest team we've played so far? Ohio?
I don't know. We have not played any good teams, but 12-0 is at least enough to get you a top 25 given what you were last year.
I think it should be. I think we're only like one of 7 schools now that are undefeated in baseball.
7 or 6, and we're one of them. That should at least warrant like a 20 to 25 ranking.
That gives me a lot of confidence that Randy Mazey wasn't the main cog that we had last year that had us in the successful turn of college baseball. I have a lot of faith in our coaching staff now.
Either way,
it's looking great.
The baseball team's rolling. I think they're going to continue rolling. Big 12's there's some tough competition towards the top, but I like what we got, even without JJ.
Yeah, JJ should be doing good in St. Louis, though. Even though I don't like the Cardinals, I should enjoy watching him, regardless.
I'm not a huge baseball guy. Used to be. I used
I'm
to
not
play
either.
baseball, but
I know teams well enough, and then I know who I like and who I don't like because I'm a Pirates fan. So we suck, but at the same time, you still have the rivalries regardless.
He likes anything Pittsburgh that isn't the Panthers.
Which is like normal North Central West Virginia resident territory.
Yeah,
Anyone who's within 3 hours of Pittsburgh sort of feels that way.
All right, some football talk. 4th day of spring practice just wrapped up. There'll be more by the time y'all see this. Main thing I took from today, because Rich Rod had his presser today after practice as well, guys just learning how to practice. He said that it was not a great practice overall today, especially on the defensive side, but it was not a matter of not wanting to learn. There's the desire to learn and get better, but the guys just got to learn how to learn and get better and develop a quote-unquote hard edge. There were a couple other key things in there. One of them that stuck out to me was Rodney Gallagher. He said that he is going to be a talented guy in the wide receiver room and one of the main guys, but there's a lot of competition there, even though it is also one of the thinner positions. And he did essentially rule out Rodney playing both sides of the ball next year. We know last year Rodney played corner and receiver. Rich Rod pretty much ruled that out, and I believe he said if that's the case, they've done a crappy job at filling out the back end of the secondary.
That's fair.
Which is honestly, I can't believe we didn't clock that last year. If Rodney Gallagher, because I remember a quote vividly that Neil said he was the best one-on-one coverage guy in the secondary. If a receiver is our best one-on-one coverage guy, our secondary is pretty trash.
Yeah.
Well, we did call that one out a lot.
So our secondary last year was trash. I'm hoping it's better this year.
But still, you were seeing clips of Garnett Hollis in the combine locking people down.
I might have overstated that a little bit. I wouldn't say locking people down, but he was playing far better than what he was in the regular season. And I did notice that a main part of that was not combine; they were camps and the Shrine Bowl. I don't think he got an invite to the combine. Wyatt Milam did, and he performed very well. So we're going to be looking for Wyatt Milam come NFL draft. He should be first round. He should be first day. So
I hope so, dude.
Congratulations to Wyatt. But back to Garnett Hollis, they had him playing. I mean, I don't know. I say they. It's probably more of an individual decision because it's a camp or Shrine Bowl, whatever. Press man coverage, which is something that, for whatever reason, Jordan Leslie and Shadon Brown refused to do. They always had our corners playing 10 yards back, and it was like a 7 to 10 yard curl, and the receiver's already off him. That's just an easy 7 to 10 yards.
Right.
So when he was playing press coverage, he was playing good defense. It is what it is. 2024 season's behind us.
It at least seemed like when we played the man press, the few times that we did it, though, we just got beat because it was a bad play call. It was more of a reactionary call to what the offensive set was.
Like Garnett might have been in position, but then everybody else was not.
Yeah.
Like if we played man and Garnett Hollis is playing man-to-man on his and has his guy covered, somebody's getting by Aiden Garnes or Jaheim Joseph or Aubrey Burks. Secondary was not good. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
The whole main point of that was that Garnett Hollis, we apologize for some disses we may or may not have threw at you during the season, and we can clearly see that it was more of a coaching issue. And the fact that Rodney Gallagher will not be playing cornerback come 2025. That's about all I have for football. That was the main takeaways. That wasn't a great practice, but it wasn't from a lack of want to learn or effort. It was a lack of not knowing the system yet.
And you know what? I like Rich Rod coming out and saying that. I think it's important that the players know that, and I think it's important the press and the fans know where the team stands right now. And him saying that is actually a good sign of progress. So it should get a lot of people excited that now we're learning our system.
I take it back. There's one more thing I want to talk about for football because it's fresh on my mind. I could not think of his name, but we hired Larry Porter. That was his name as our running back coach,
right?
To replace Chad Scott.
Yeah.
My goodness, my fault.
I was like,
to replace Chad Scott.
Yeah,
that is at worst a as equal position hire or at best an upgrade. He's responsible for Amarian Hampton, who's going to be in the NFL next year. He is a multi-time assistant of the year. I've seen the award. I can't remember the name of it. He's got the hardware to show that he's a worthy coach, and he's got the players and recruiting to back it up.
An adequate replacement.
I want to say he was responsible for the recruitment of Justin Jefferson at LSU. I could be totally wrong about that. But I saw that
music to my ears.
I saw that somewhere, and I want to say that Larry Porter was responsible for the recruitment of Justin Jefferson at LSU. Do not quote me on that. Maybe.
It's just
2000. Okay, yeah. So he was at LSU. So I'm going to say I'm close, if not on.
I'll say you're half right. I'll say you're half right to be safe.
Yeah. We'll go with it. Either way, if that is 100% true, that's just a good sign. Justin Jefferson, Amarian Hampton, those are not small names.
Yeah, I still haven't done too much research into the hire, but I approve. I think
seems like a good hire. Like I said, equal to or upgrade at the position, I believe.
And he's going to develop the hard edge
Heck yeah.
in those players. That's what we're looking for.
Jaheim, he's going to have a crazy season.
Oh, and one more thing on football. I wanted to mention Neil Brown, right?
That's go for it.
Well, Neil Brown was hired by Texas. He will not be an offensive coordinator.
Position is unknown right now.
Position is unknown. So I don't think he's going to be a coordinator, though, because I would assume if a school hired a coordinator, they would just want to say coordinator. Like, they would want it known, and it would be big press. But I'm not sure. I mean, he could be a coordinator. It depends on what Texas wants to do, to be honest. But I could see him being maybe a receiver coach.
From what I've seen, it's assistant for multiple positions, basically.
Okay. Just weird.
Either way.
Kind of. I'm surprised, but I'm not, because I thought he would want to take a head coaching job again.
I was shocked he didn't take the UMass head coaching job when it was still open.
We heard his name floating around UMass even before the last home game, so
yeah,
I thought he was going to go back to UMass. It's his alma mater. So
either way, 2 West Virginia guys at Texas. If they're back in the mix, and my fault, didn't mean to.
You good?
To slap you over there. If they're back in the mix for college football playoff next year, I'll be rooting for them simply because despite my problems with Neil as a head coach, I did like him as a person.
He's a good guy.
And his character. And then Chad Scott, both ways. I mean, I think he's going to be a great head coach one day, despite only being a running backs coach right now, and his character and personality as well. Chad Scott's a good guy.
I'm still horns down, though.
Yeah, horns down.
I'm still horns down.
But come on, horns down or Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
Who would you?
Who I hate
if
worse?
You had like the Final Four. Well, this wasn't the Final Four, but if you had to choose between Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, who would you like to win out of those four?
Out of those 4?
Even though I know it was.
Oh, it sucks. It sucks. I think I'd have to have Ohio State in there.
That's crazy.
They'd be my first choice.
I'm taking Texas.
And then probably Texas in there with Ohio State.
Arch Manning's taking them all the way.
That's what I said this year, but they didn't play him. So.
You know, I'd like to see it. It'd be nice to see another Manning do well. How much of it is media hype, I guess we'll see. But he did play well in the games that he played in. So
there's going to be a lot of new quarterbacks at the quote unquote title contenders next year. Notre Dame is not going to have Riley Leonard. Texas is not going to have. I can't even think of his name. They're going to have Arch Manning. I cannot think of his name.
Quinn Ewers.
Quinn Ewers. There you go.
Where's he going
Ohio
in the draft,
State
by the way?
Quinn Ewers? I don't know. It's a good question. Miami's not going to have
Tennessee.
Cam Ward. They picked up Carson Beck. Georgia's obviously not going to have Carson Beck. They're going to have Gunnar Stockton. There's going to be a lot of new quarterbacks. LSU is going to have, Garrett Nussmeier. So he's going to be one of the few SEC returning quarterbacks. So that's going to be interesting to see. Him, Lenore Sellers, and DJ Lagway at Florida, South Carolina, LSU. Those are all programs I'd keep an eye on for next year.
I have decided my favorite SEC team as of right now is Arkansas. To me, they're like the only likable SEC team besides Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt seems to never do good enough.
Pig Suey. Woo pig.
I'm a fan of the Razorbacks. Actually, I'm a fan of Rutgers, man. We keep forgetting about Rutgers. We started
Because you're a
this.
casual.
Rutgers casual,
Dude,
man.
we started this podcast. We're like, man, Rutgers is our second team. Like, we gotta.
Jit is Utah and wait, Utah, right? Not BYU.
He's Utah.
Not
He's Utah.
That's a bad
not
mess up,
BYU.
man.
Utah.
It's Utah. It's definitely
Yeah.
Utah.
Utah.
And Nebraska, right? You're saying you have family in Nebraska.
I do.
Nebraska.
I like Nebraska too. It seems like they're very similar to us in the way the fan base responds and the
I
way
agree.
the way the fan base is.
I've
And
been
Did you
to
know-
one Nebraska game.
I learned
I'm just gonna pause you right there. Their fan base is nothing like ours. I've been to a game. It is nothing like the atmosphere at
like
a
as in
WVU
we're
game.
Better.
Yes.
Good man.
Definitely. That's something I've seen a lot of the student athletes here talk about. That they say, it feels like home. That's a lot of them. Like when you see, like with the transfer portal, everyone says, "Come home, come home."
right.
So
I found some interesting information that I did not know. We talk about like Nebraska being very similar to West Virginia and the fact that West Virginia University kind of is the pro sports team for West Virginia fans because there is no pro sports team. Arkansas is the only other team that is not in a state with a professional sports team in one of the big, four? NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB.
Really? So
I believe.
Well, you got like
if my source is correct, yes.
You got like the Dakotas, right? Do the Dakotas have any?
Well, they don't have any. I'm saying strictly FBS programs.
Okay.
Dakota, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, South Dakota, North Dakota are in FCS.
Where's Wyoming?
I don't know if Wyoming has one or not. Surely they do. I saw that though. It's like Arkansas and West Virginia are the only two. So surely Wyoming has one that we just can't think of off the top of my head.
They have Josh Allen. It's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More football talk, but on a different note. ACC reaches a revenue distribution settlement with Florida State and Clemson. That's big news. I'm going to sum it up because there's a lot of moving parts. There will now be unequal revenue distribution. So basically, Florida State and Clemson get the most viewers. So they started to sue the ACC because why does Wake Forest get the same amount of revenue from the conference that Florida State does when Florida State gets such and such viewers and Wake Forest only gets such and such viewers?
Right.
So now there's going to be unequal revenue distribution. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina. Those are going to be the schools that make more. Wake Forest, NC State, Boston College, those are going to be the schools that make less. The bigger part, and that could have an effect eventually on the Big 12 and really college football as a whole, is that up until now, if Florida State and Clemson wanted to leave the ACC, there was a $700 million buyout to leave the conference. Now, that is dropped to $165 million, and that declines by $18 million every year, leveling out at $75 million by 2030. I will tell you now that in 2030, college football conferences will not look remotely the same. We will have another wave of major college football realignment. Florida State and Clemson will be out of the ACC, likely in one of the Power 2 of the SEC and Big 10. It's just the way it is. The first two teams to follow, I imagine, will be Miami and North Carolina. Those are the two biggest brands in the ACC outside of Clemson and Florida State. But once the Big 10 ends up, and the SEC ends up grabbing the schools that they do want, it's going to be unlikely that the teams remaining in the ACC are going to want to stay there, given they will probably have a larger opportunity to earn more and compete for national championships in the Big 12. That means the Louisvilles, the Virginia Techs, the NC States, the Dukes of the world could end up finding their way into the Big 12 at some point or another. Sooner or later, we're going to have 20 team conferences and no ACC. I wholeheartedly believe that, even if some of you guys want to say that the ACC will find a way to figure it out. I doubt that's the case.
Let's make a note, America. We're going to come back in
6 years. No, not 6 years. In 5 years, come back.
That feels like 20 years away.
Yeah, we're saying 2030.
That isn't right, man.
I read 2030 and I was like, so what? That's like 10 years away. So much can happen. And then I was thinking about it. It's like, it's only 5 years from now.
That's crazy.
So huge deal for the ACC and the two powers that be in the ACC. Do you all have anything in particular you'd like to add? Because this kind of does transition into the point that I didn't tell you all about. Little secret segment.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to feel about it yet. Time will tell. You can obviously tell that schools have more leeway and more power than others. And there's always a balance of power in every conference. So I think Florida State and Clemson do recognize that they're the upper echelon of the ACC, and they are the driving force behind the conference, especially when it comes to football. And football is obviously the most popular sport that everybody watches in the NCAA, more than basketball. And so it weighs more. And I think that they're playing their cards right as a university. If they want to be able to go to the SEC or Big Ten, that will happen. And this is sort of the start of potentially the bad in conference realignment, because if the SEC and Big Ten become so far spaced out from the Big 12 and ACC,
if they pick up Florida State, Clemson, you can say goodbye to the Power Four.
yeah,
It's Power Two, and sooner or later the SEC and Big Ten will split from the NCAA and leave everybody else behind. I mean, it's totally messed up that that's the way it is, but Florida State and Clemson, like you said, they're doing what's best for their university. And then sooner or later, the SEC and Big Ten are going to realize that what's best for their conference is to pick up the two huge football powers. I mean, Clemson pretty much owned the 4-team playoff along with like Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. They're right there in the mix. The Trevor Lawrence years, the Deshaun Watson years. It sucks, but it is what it is. What I'm interested to see is that because there's now this unequal revenue distribution, if any of those smaller schools, I don't know the viewership numbers for each school in the ACC, but let's take a team like Pitt, for example, or Louisville. Are their TV numbers high enough to warrant being in the ACC over trying to get the Big 12 to let them in? Like, if, of course, they probably wouldn't be able to do that anyway, because the buyout is still not a small chunk of money. $165 million is still a large chunk of money, but still.
I agree. Honestly, this sort of kicked my racing fan thinking cap on, where back in the 90s, for any of you guys that watch racing, there was a split in IndyCar. IndyCar split up and became CART and IRL, Indy Racing League. And it was all because the bigger teams in the Indy League, Ganassi, Penske, other teams like that, wanted a different rule set because they knew that their cars won all the time. And CART had some big teams, but they weren't as big as the IRL. And this split just like damaged the popularity of the sport as a whole. And I could see almost the exact same thing happening here, because you're going to have split fan bases regardless of how small the schools are. Like, you're always going to have fans of Villanova, even. Like, Villanova, West Virginia, like the smaller teams that everyone knows about. You're going to have those fan bases who aren't going to be able to have the peace of mind and confidence that they're competing with the best. And when we go back and look at the IndyCar split, they eventually realized that what they were doing was stupid. Like, so much money was lost in the process, and they came back together. And I think that it's a different situation, but people should be looking at situations like that and seeing the actual consequences of what happened.
So I like what you said there, because we've talked about it before, that what the SEC and the Big Ten are doing now feels like a short-term profit boost rather than a long-term profit boost. Eventually, like, let's say this new playoff model, the 14-team playoff with 4 auto bids for the SEC, Big Ten, and only 2 for the Big 10 or Big 12 and ACC, right? Let's say that goes into effect. Sooner or later, it's going to keep going that direction. The SEC and Big Ten are going to realize that, hey, we don't need the Big 12 and ACC anymore. Let's just leave. So what I think we're seriously on the verge of happening, and I think it would be a terrible move for the sport, is the SEC and Big Ten either expand to 20 or 24 teams each. Let's just say 20. So the SEC would have to pick up 4. It will likely be Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia. Those are the 4 states in the South they haven't expanded to. North Carolina and Virginia. They obviously have South Carolina and Florida already. But I imagine that would be the 4 they would pick up, and then let's say the Big Ten finally adds Notre Dame, and then the biggest brand left in the ACC would be Miami. Let's say they take them, they would split from the NCAA and everybody else. They would have their own playoff, they'd have their own league, they'd have their own scheduling agreements. They would have nothing left to do with the Big 12 and the ACC. Big 12 and ACC would do what they can to stay alive, merge probably. The schools that are left in the ACC and the Big 12 would likely merge and form some form of their own league. Like you said, IndyCar and what was the other one?
Indy Racing League and CART.
Yeah, so
they both split off from IndyCar.
Yeah, so the SEC and Big 10 basically become one, and Big 12 and ACC become the other. But there's a clear power differential.
Right.
So that looks good in theory to the SEC and Big 10, because it's like, why are we paying these smaller schools money that we don't need, and they aren't even competing or getting as much TV recognition as we are? But then as soon as you do that, so many fans of these smaller schools are just going to stop watching.
Exactly.
So short-term profit boost versus long-term profit boost.
Like, I was just thinking as you were explaining that, I thought back to Indy again. And when this split occurred, you obviously think about the Indy 500, which is the big racing event that everyone watches for IndyCar. Like, if you're even a remote sports fan of any kind, you watch the Daytona 500. If you're a remote sports fan of any kind, you watch the Indy 500. Those are just two massive sporting events, not even just racing events, but sporting events that happen every year. When that happened, the IRL was the sole owner of the Indy 500. Like, CART was not legally allowed to compete in the Indy 500. It was just the IRL. And when that happened, viewership dropped massively. I don't have exact figures, but the last time I actually researched and watched videos on this topic, it was around like 30%, 40% viewership fall off.
That's what would happen, because you'd still have like the Alabama fans, the Georgia fans, the Ohio State fans watching.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You'd still have those fans watching. Sorry about that. But the fans of the smaller schools that still watch the playoff, like we're West Virginia fans, but we still watch the college football playoff. Those types of fans likely aren't going to tune in to the higher level because their team has nothing to do with it anymore.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, it's
that's the way it's going to be.
It is what it is. It's going to take time. I guess we'll see how it plays out.
What is your secret
I have
topic?
one more secret segment that we can just briefly hit on, because I've seen a lot of articles and even a video from a guy that I really do like watching and value his opinion, because I think he's one of the smarter media personalities that covers college football. And that is, does the Big 12 have a chance to ever compete for a national title? Yes, they have an auto bid. So the Big 12 will always, for the time being, be represented in the college football playoff. Does any team have a chance to win a national title? Before I give my opinion, I'd like to ask you all.
Matt's just looking at me, so I'm going to give my quick opinion. I'm obviously going to develop more of an opinion as we talk about it. But I would say there's always a chance. If we have an auto bid and the playoff is open to our league, then yes, there's going to be a chance. Where it comes to be an issue for me is revenue and recruiting. Recruiting being the bigger of the two, which recruiting is also controlled by revenue. So those are the two biggest factors for me, and it depends on the Big 12's popularity. Like, how many people watch our games? How many fans do we have that are buying tickets, buying subscriptions to ESPN Plus to watch our team, right? And then that will generate a general idea of how much revenue we bring in for the league. And then our schools can use that revenue to recruit the best players. And we've been having trouble recruiting the tip-top players in general. that has sort of changed as of recently because BYU in basketball, this is kind of different, but BYU in basketball got the #1 overall ESPN recruit to go to their school next year, and they're saying he's going to be a one and done, and he's going to go to the NBA. I'm blanking on his name, but
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either, though.
So it's a bad thing though that's notable for the Big 12 because if we had a realistic chance, that would be happening constantly. Oh, like Iowa State got the #3 recruit in football, or West Virginia got like the best O lineman recruit in the country. That's where I start to draw a line because all these top recruits are going to SEC and Big Ten schools. So, do I think we have a chance? Yes. Can it change in our favor? Yes. But right now, we aren't in a position. But I think it can change if people worked on the right issues.
Matt?
Short answer, yes.
So
Since we're doing a short
you
segment.
think the Big 12 can compete for a national title?
Yeah.
This is a tweet from Bud Elliott. And then it was obviously replayed on a recent Josh Pate podcast. Bud Elliott's tweet says, in terms of having a legit title contender, the Big 12 is closer to the group of 5 than the other 3 Power 4 leagues. I love the Big 12 for its entertainment value and competitiveness, but barring massive structural changes to college football, we'll all be dead before a Big 12 team wins the playoff. Josh Pate relatively agreed. He had a little bit of an explanation, and I disagree. Now,
Okay.
I'm not going to sit up here and say that the Big 12 has the same chance or likelihood to win the playoff that the SEC or Big 10 do. Okay, 9 times out of 10, the SEC and the Big 10 are going to win the national championship. They have all the blue blood teams, okay? And then he even brought up the Power 4. The ACC has Florida State and Clemson who have shown they can do it. But I seriously think he's undervaluing the Big 12 and what the Big 12 can do.
I agree.
The main selling point especially that Josh had, was we saw what Arizona State did this year. They were basically 1 4th down play from winning against Texas and making it to the next round. His main point was, okay, they did do that, but then they've got to do it 2 more times to even be in the national championship game and then do it a 3rd time to win it. Okay. That doesn't mean it's not impossible. And to say that not Josh, but for Bud Elliott to say that we're closer to a group of 5 conference than the Power 4 when Arizona State did what they did this year, TCU in 2022 beat Michigan. It wasn't like they were one off. If Georgia was not an absolute, just complete dominant team that they were, Georgia was not losing to anybody in college football that game. Nobody. And that's who TCU had to play. If that Georgia team did not exist, if they had one down year, TCU very well could have competed in 2022. And then I have a few other examples as well. UCF in 2017 and 2018 are known as the biggest playoff snubs outside of 2014 TCU. And then there's a few other examples. But 2017, 2018 UCF, at the time they were in the American and had a much easier schedule. But they beat Auburn in a bowl game, and they took Joe Burrow-led LSU to the wire. This is UCF we're talking about. This is a Big 12 team. I know they've struggled since they joined the Big 12, but it's not like they can't return to that.
I think all of your points are absolutely correct. I'm going to be a little quick with my analysis. I got to go here soon. But Go back to that tweet. I feel like this Bud Elliott guy, I don't know him, okay? I genuinely don't. I tweet bad stuff. I feel like it's human nature for anyone that uses Twitter that they tweet some BS out. I feel like this is coming from a place of fandom where Bud Elliott is a fan of a team that's in the SEC or Big Ten.
No, well, Bud Elliott's a college football guy. He's not a fandom guy.
He's definitely a fan.
I feel like Josh Pate is a fan of somebody.
I disagree.
Truly
He's
do.
from Tennessee. Well, I don't know if he's from Tennessee.
Well-
He's in Tennessee. He lives in Tennessee.
I feel like what he says at the end is gloating.
I think
It's just gloating.
it's tough because I do think it's possible for the Big 12 to do it, and teams in the Big 12 have done it. Other teams that before what you said that I was going to say was Cincinnati in 2021. They got their butt kicked by Georgia in the playoff, but still they
made it there.
And then I think the biggest argument point is Utah. Utah is right up there with some of those teams that can win it. I mean, Utah, when they were in the Pac-12, could compete with Oregon, could compete with USC, could compete with Washington. Those were the perennial teams in the Pac-12, and they're now in the Big Ten. You can't tell me that on a great year, Utah has a really good recruiting class, finds a great guy that can lead their team, some great guys for leadership on their roster, that Utah can't do it. And then the other one I have listed is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has been so consistent. It takes one breakthrough year and then everybody else to have a down year. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, the SEC and the Big Ten are going to do it. And I even looked up the last time a current team in the Big 12 won a national championship. It was 1990, Colorado, and it was pre-BCS. And they split it with Georgia Tech. So that was 35 years ago. So he's got a point. But I still think they're way undervaluing the fact that it might be rare, but it is possible. And to say that the Big 12 is closer to the G5 than winning a national champion compared to the other Power 4 conferences is completely asinine to me. That's a crazy take.
That's all I got to say about it.
Yeah, it's just a bad take.
So,
But Josh Pate agrees with it, so it's got to be true because he's college football commissioner. I'm coming for it.
good God.
I love you, Josh Pate. Like I really do love for the most part, agree with his takes. This is one I disagree on, and I think that it's a little silly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say about that because you said it all. So is that all of our time, all of our thoughts?
I don't have anything
Good
else.
place to wrap up.
Compartmentalized. Okay, well, for you guys watching, make sure to follow all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're all active on there. We're going to be changing up a little bit of our formatting and our posting, so keep an eye out for that. I should make a post about that here in the next week or so. Yeah, make sure to comment too. Leave us your thoughts. We want to know your thoughts. We could go back to some Q&A sessions if we got enough feedback. Be interactive with us. So, all right, I think that's going to do it for this episode. So from me, from Tyler, from Matt, and from Jit, good night. See you on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.
Good night, gamers.